if you do something that was mentioned in the commandments, if you do it wrong, you get punished, but you know who to talk to. Now, when it comes to the constitution, as an average citizen, who can I go and talk to and say, I think so much that my voice can be heard in parliament, so much that the executive can do something about what I, as Erica, the average citizen, thinks?
Okay, I think this is a very, very important question, which can be resolved through many, solutions. The first one, obviously, is through your local member of parliament, because when you elect a member of parliament, their job is to represent you in parliament, where laws are made, where laws are debated. The other alternative is when the president appoints cabinet, he appoints mandates to specific ministers, where, for instance, you've got a minister who's told that you are in charge of the Children's Act, you are in charge of the Zinwa Act, you are in charge of the Post and Telecommunications Act, and so on. Citizens are free to also approach these specific ministers and say, we notice that there is a gap here, can you move to resolve it? You also have community-based initiatives through private voluntary organizations, through even political parties, where they can, make noise about something. The media, for instance, which you're also part of, has got a voice which it can use to express concerns, which the relevant members of parliament and members of the executive can pick up and move to amend and make the changes in parliament.
I will keep referring to the Bible because that's a big book. But when it comes to how we live, we have to talk about the Constitution. Now, as a legal expert, please can you link the book to me, the average citizen, and to the lawmakers? What I'm asking is, how do I get a hold of it? I would hate to assume that it's like a magazine where we can walk into an outlet and get one. We're living in a digital age right now where everything is on social media. From your knowledge, what is the government doing about it? What are the people responsible for that dissemination of information doing so that we get the Constitution, we get to understand it as well?
Well, firstly, obviously, because we live in a digital world, everything is now available online. So one can simply, search and find a copy of the Constitution online. In terms of the government, what I've seen a number of exhibitions marshaled by officials from the Ministry of Justice and some from the Office of the Attorney General, where they've exhibited at your Independence Day, Heroes Day, National Youth Day, ZITF, and various agricultural shows, and they give out copies of these constitutions. And when you also look at the fact that this same constitution speaks of us having as many as 13 official languages, we've also seen government make initiatives to actually translate the constitution into, so far I've seen Shona, I've seen Isindebele copies of the constitution, so that people don't just read these big words which are written in English, but they can also read it within their own indigenous language and understand it. So government is doing a lot, and more obviously needs to be done to translate it into your Tonga, Nambia, Shangani, and the other, indigenous languages that we have.
I think the main mission we are running with is making sure that everyone is involved. Now, with age and with time, we need to revise laws. We've seen the revision of syllabuses in schools. Please, can you tell us when and if the Constitution does have a revisit? After how long? And mainly for what purposes? Because a lot of things are changing. Of course, we now have social media acts that we didn't have way back in 1990 or in 2013. We need to revisit those things. So how often is this being done? And as a legal expert, what part do you take part in that whole, as lawyers, in that whole programming of the next Constitution or the upgraded version of the Constitution?
There are basically two issues that maybe we need to streamline, which is that the Constitution itself is a foundation. You'll have specific, statutes, like you can have your Road Traffic Act, which deals with what happens on the road. Those ones can be amended through your normal process in Parliament, where the cabinet minister responsible goes to Parliament and says, would like to amend this law. The MPs will obviously debate it. There will be public hearings. And if the amendment is approved by the Parliamentary Legal Committee and other committees, it goes through, the normal processes, that law can be amended or updated or upgraded depending on what word you want to use. When you then talk of the supreme law of the nation, the process is almost similar. in the sense that there has to be somebody who comes up to say, let's amend this constitution. So that normally is a cabinet minister, usually the Minister of Justice, who goes to Parliament and submits to the Speaker of Parliament to say, this is what we are thinking. The Speaker of Parliament will then gazette that proposed amendment, and debate will then begin through public hearings, where you see parliamentary committees or members of parliament going around the nation, meeting people in selected places. And these places are published well in advance. The communities are notified to say, we are going to come there. We want to hear your views. These views will then be taken on board and taken to Parliament and debated by Parliament. But beyond these public hearings, you also have Parliament opening up platforms where individuals can send letters and comments via email or deliver them in person at Parliament buildings. So there are various methods through which this can be done. In terms of how often this would happen, the Constitution is a living document which must live up to the needs of society. And when you look at the fact that society is dynamic, amendments to the Constitution happen as and when those in the community deem it necessary. So if you want to go for 100 years and you think you're okay with your Constitution, it's okay. If you want to amend your Constitution after 6 months or a year or 5 years, it's up to you. So there is no hard and fast rule which governs how often you can amend your Constitution.
If you're just joining us, thank you so much for joining us. We are talking about what is the Constitution. We're trying to make the word digestible because on so many days we talk about it. Constitution, but do we really know what it is? And today I am speaking to legal expert Kuda Mzenda. I must ask you, when can you apply it? I'm going to add more to my question. I'm going to edify it. You know, ukasungirwa traffic but that's not part of the Constitution. At what point do I, as a normal citizen, dapinda in the hands of the law enforcement, say, but I work amendment, Erica, I can't be treated like this, or these are my rights. When do we bring it in? Should we bring it in? Trukusia a higher level of authority or lawmakers to bring it in. Pandiri Panapa, where can I start with it? As an example, Constitution or not?
All right. So the Constitution, like I said, it is a foundational document. For instance, you'll have your Bill of Rights, which will talk about the right to a fair hearing, the right to administrative justice, your environmental rights, the right to life. But it will also give what we call permissible limitations, where we are saying you've got a right to freedom, but there are instances where we can take away that right to freedom. And then it will then say a specific act of law will be promulgated or made by Parliament to then specify this. So this is when you then have a law such as the Road Traffic Act talking about negligent driving, talking about reckless driving, for instance. And that law will then specify, when it is, we can say this person has been negligent. When do we say a person has been reckless? It will go further to then specify whether you should pay a fine, and if you are going to be imprisoned, what is the minimum sentence? What is the maximum sentence? These laws must be, in line with the Constitution. They must not violate your rights. So the question of constitutionality becomes to say, we have made a law that says we can arrest Erica Ndoro and restrict her rights to freedom. Is this restriction fair? Is this restriction permissible in terms of the right that the Constitution gives her? So this job of then interpreting whether this is fair or not, it's performed obviously by the Parliamentary Legal Committee. When laws are debated before Parliament, there is a special committee which has lawyers and other members of good standing who assess whether the law is in line with the Constitution. But even if such a law is passed, as a citizen of Zimbabwe, you have a right to approach the Constitutional Court or any of the superior courts to say, I believe that this provision is not in line with my constitutional rights. For example, we had a judgment on corporal punishment If you grew up, you'd have your parents discipline you and so on. And somebody had to approach the High Court and say, I believe that corporal punishment amounts to inhuman and degrading treatment and therefore violates the Constitution. And our courts ruled that corporal punishment was, contrary to the Constitution. And now teachers can't discipline children that in the way that they used to discipline them.
Thank you so much. This is all in aid of making sure that you and I understand the Constitution. And in this small episode, we've tried to put together and just back up the Constitution. What is the Constitution was the main question. I do hope that our resource person, the legal Kudakwashi Mzenda, did try and just put it together. I think in closing, if you could just help us, if you're talking to someone in the Jiffy and they say to you, what is the Constitution? Would you say that you've said everything that you should say, maybe, in 3 minutes to a 12-year-old?
Well, I'll just say that the Constitution is the supreme law made for the people, by the people, and that when issues of amending or upgrading the Constitution come up, every individual has a right to express their views, to participate. But at the end of the day, it is normally the will of the majority that takes precedence. But that's what I would say.
Thank you so much for joining us here. I was talking here about the questions that you and I have at home. Today specifically, it was what is the Constitution? But here on The Fix, we talk about the issues that you and I have. We try to bring in the stakeholders, the movers and shakers, to bring them into the conversation so that you and I can go to bed nicely. So hoping that today that was done. Now stay in tune with The Fix. With more episodes, you get to understand a lot more that we've got questions on. My name is Erica Ndoro. Until next time.